Thanks for choosing to watch the video. The temperatures have dropped, haven't they? Can you feel it? And you know what that means? I've started thinking about the perch. This one ain't about perch, but I have started prepping. So, you know, I'm talking about, you know, getting the lures in, getting the lure rods ready, putting new braid on the reels, all that sort of thing. And I'm looking forward to getting out there and doing some perch fishing. But on this one, we are going on a bit of an adventure up into the Fens on the hunt for a big wild rudd. The Fens contains a network of quite long, daunting drains and rivers around the Cambridgeshire area. It became apparent quite quickly that there's actually quite a lot of rudd present, but actually finding the big fish in this challenging environment was going to be a bit of a challenge. But I was in good hands with Dan, Ali and Beckers all meeting up with me at the start of the trip, and it's a challenge that starts on a family campsite somewhere in the middle of nowhere. There we go, there's the wagon, look. As you can see, I'm on a sort of family type campsite. And there's my setup, look. I think this is probably the first time I've ever put a bivvy up properly. When you're fishing, you whack it up any old how, don't you? Because you're desperate to get fishing. I don't know, that's what I do anyway. But look, even got the ground sheet down. Never put the ground sheet in. Look, that's all I need. Perfect. And then this happened. What the hell? I'm not joking when I say it's not rained in months. It doesn't feel like it anyway. I set up a bivvy, hitting the last peg, and it is absolutely peeing it down. After one almighty storm and a short drive, and I found myself in stunning surroundings on the banks of the Fens. You wouldn't have believed there'd been a storm, because then the sun came out and we were able to get down to some fishing. So you probably can't see, but I've chucked the bread in, and as it's floating down, and you can see a little bit there maybe. As it's floating down, you can see small fish hitting it. And what I'm doing is I'm walking down the bank, sort of following it along, just hoping something bigger comes up. Already had a few this size, only been here like 20 minutes. Hopefully there's something bigger down there. Nice one, mate. Smile. I think you caught that one there.
No, I just did a bit of netting.
Wicked, well done, mate. Just such a long drain. Just putting bread in, sort of walking down the bank with it. There's only a little bit of flow, but I can slowly follow the bread and try and see if we can find those bigger rudd. So we just had one. Unfortunately the GoPro didn't start. Just trotting down there. Can't quite believe how we've timed this. I mean, obviously we check the weather before we go fishing, don't we? It said light rain, but to be honest, last night it was torrential. I think the conditions have changed too much too quickly. from a long spell of warm, hot weather to cold and rainy. I think that dramatic change is definitely affecting the fishing. Always does. Got another, what feels like half decent one. Got a little bit of flow here, so being a bit careful with it. It's not a monster. But on a day where we're not getting that many, I will take it. There we go. And there we go, look. Stunning rudd. They're not the biggest, but they are a start. Happy with those. We'll keep coming and see if we can catch bigger. Just want to take a moment out to give you a few tips based on my first experience of the Fens. If you want to come and do this for the first time, here's a few things that I would strongly recommend. People often do this type of fishing in the summer in really hot weather. You know, rudd like being up in the water, so people do tend to target them when it's hot weather. Don't be tempted to wear shorts, whatever you do, right? Wear long trousers, ideally made of fairly thick material. Tuck those into your socks, and this is for a reason that will become very apparent later in the video. You'll be walking a fair distance too, so I would suggest a really decent pair of walking boots, not walking shoes. That's because the banks here are quite treacherous. They're very steep, and trust me, your ankles will really appreciate the extra support given to you by a pair of decent walking boots. Be prepared to jump in and out of a car to explore different stretches. I would also suggest a long landing net handle, something at least 3 meters long, I would say. Again, you've got very steep banks that are quite often lined by fairly thick reeds, and being able to fish over the top of those reeds is a real advantage. So I would definitely suggest a long landing net handle to help you do that, and I would suggest a long rod. I would suggest something that's at least 14 foot long in terms of a rod. Mine's only 13 to be honest, but I can see, you know, I think something that's 14 and above would be an advantage. So that brings me to the outfit. I'm using the 13-foot Coram Glide float rod. Onto that, I've got a 4,000 size Inferno reel that's loaded with 4-pound line. That's coming down to one of the Preston Pellet Wagglers. It's a 4-gram Waggler, although I'm doing something with that I'll take you through in a minute. That's just sandwiched between 2 float stops. That comes down to a hook length that's 3-pound breaking strain. You probably could go a little bit lighter, but there's a hell of a lot of floating weed in this drain at the moment, so I've gone with a 3-pound hook length. In this scenario, I wouldn't use anything like a quick link or something for your hook length. That's because I prefer to use a back-to-back grinner or a knot like that, where you're sort of like attaching 2 bits of line together. The reason for that is that these fish really like hitting the bread on the surface or just below the surface, or even more so as it's falling. And yeah, a component there to hold on your hook length is possibly just going to drag it down. So in this scenario, I would avoid a quick link or anything like that. And on the business end, I started off on a size 14 hook. I stepped that up quite quickly to a 12, which might sound quite large for a small rudd, but I found myself using larger and larger lumps of bread to try and avoid the small fish. And you know, I just had to try and marry up the hook with the size of the hook bait that I was using. I mentioned something that I was doing with a pellet waggler. So here, that's the 4 gram pellet waggler. The problem that I had is this was just sitting a little bit too low in the water for me. I'm not sure why. Maybe it was the weight of the bread once it had taken on some water. For whatever reason, it was just sitting too low in the water. So what I did on the 4 gram version, you can just literally take the body out like that. I got the body from the 5 gram version, put that in the base of the 4 gram version, and now I had a float that was actually sitting much higher in the water for me, which is what I preferred. It's what I wanted, helped out my poor old eyes. So just a little bit of a tip, if these are sitting too low in the water, just replace the body with a slightly heavier float. So even though conditions aren't great, I've decided to stay on another day. You know, it's a long way to come for a couple of very, very short sessions. And if I stay another night, it means I can fish this evening and tomorrow morning again. I'm sort of working through the middle of the day remotely, just wherever I can get a connection. But yeah, it gives me another 2 short sessions to hopefully get a decent rud. I've got something that's working quite well. That's just to put bread along the far margin upstream. Let it come down and try and pick off the fish sort of at the end of the run. So we'll just cast this downstream and onto the far bank. That's it, that'll do. God, it's quite brutal. Wind's really picking up. So exposed along these drums. You really are. It's, you know, you've got the steep banks which, you know, you can easily slide down and land in the water, and you've got these winds. Only got a small hook and a light line. Here's a rud. Come on, you little beauty. In you go. Yes. So it's still not big, quite little in fact, but we'll keep going, we'll get there. Still a stunning, stunning little rud. Red ants are all over me. I look down and they're all crawling in my shoes. They're everywhere, and they are painful. They bite. I ain't standing down there anymore. Stand in those and try and fish, you're just getting attacked by ants. So I could get kicked off the campsite for doing videos in the toilets, but I mean, look at my legs. They've got these red ants along the bank. Jesus, absolutely savaged across both legs. So here we are again. Last morning, last roll of the dice. It's coming up for about 5:30, and yeah, got 2 hours before I've got to go to work. So yeah, fingers crossed. This to me looks like some kind of hybrid, I think. Right, we're back out again this morning. At first light, all I've had so far is a small bream, which ain't ideal. But hey, wind's picked up, loads of rain last night. To be honest, I think the conditions are too changeable. It's gone from really hot to suddenly really quite cold and rainy. So that's another early morning. Not a lot to report on there. A couple of small fish. Hooks out half decent, I think. Unfortunately came off in the reeds. So yeah, spent a bit less time actually fishing and just sort of like following the bread down the river and just trying to find a better stamp of fish, but just couldn't find them. I think the changeable weather has made it quite tricky, but hey ho. There we go, a nice Fenland RUDD. I'm not going to get the big camera out, a bit shaky, but yeah, cracking, bar of gold. It's a better fish. It's not huge. No, it's not that big. It was just in the weed. Oh, I don't know, it's not too bad. Better than I thought. I'm not going to get the big camera out. It's probably about the biggest size we've had, sort of really. It's very windy. Well, it's over a pound, I would say, but it's certainly not the 2 pounder we're after, so we'll get him back. So that's the end of my first Fenland experience. I think that's the best that I'm going to be able to manage. Stunning, stunning little Fenland bar of gold. We'll keep coming. Hopefully we'll catch bigger. This might not come out too well because of the wind on the mic, which brings me to conditions. It's very windy. It's actually gone quite cold. It was supposed to be light rain last night. It wasn't. It was torrential rain. That's quite an extreme change in conditions. It's been 30 degrees and hot for as long as I know. And yeah, it's just plummeted. And I think quite often in fishing, when the change of conditions is quite extreme, it can make the fishing quite tough, and it has done. So I think we're just going to have to call it a day, come back another time. So there you go. To be honest, I've got real mixed feelings about my first taste of the Fens. I'm a bit gutted that I didn't actually catch up with any of the really big RUDD. They were only short sessions, you know, if you think about it. What was it, a dusk, then a dawn, then a dusk, then a dawn, with me working in between. So maybe my expectations were a bit high. It does give me an excuse to go back, right? As you saw, the weather had turned a bit, and again, I'm a little bit gutted I didn't go earlier in the summer. You know what it's like, you get busy, don't you, and whatever. But I do wish I'd have gone there earlier in the summer it felt like, you know, during that hot weather, I'd have probably had a bit more success maybe. Also, it feels like I've probably left it too late now, unless we have a freakishly hot spell towards, you know, in the autumn, late autumn. Like sometimes it can get really hot in October. If that happens, you can be sure I will go back and I'll have another crack at them. Otherwise, I'm going to be waiting until next summer. On a positive note though, this dip in temperatures, like I said at the start, has got me thinking about the perch. If you're starting to think about perch, I'll put my perch fishing playlist on the screen somewhere. Have a look at that, try and get inspired. Also, I've started to put the feelers out there in terms of Perch Masters this year. Definitely we'll be doing that again. You know, it was very successful last year. Enjoyed filming them and look forward to starting to film that again very, very soon. Just leaves me to remind you to like and subscribe and all that stuff. Enjoy your fishing and I'll see you in the next one.